My friends, what you are about to see has been a long time coming. And since we've all been oh so patient, I'll waste no time. I am proud and happy to be able to finally reveal, on behalf of the entire The Dawnless Days modding team, the first ever true look at the Dawnless Days campaign and its new map. Indeed, this is a monumental occasion for another reason. It represents the first real look at an entirely new and fit-for-purpose campaign map in Total War Attila. I want to preface that everything you see in this video is still very much a work in progress, subject to change, and overall still being developed. The team has been hard at work with revamping Attila's campaign mechanics to transform it into a fully fledged Lord of the Rings experience. And despite this truly revolutionary new map having come so far, this remains a very early representation of it, and will be polished and developed further. In addition, the Dawnless Days team is eagerly looking for developers to join them. So if you are, or if you know any UI designers, 3D artists, level designers, or animators, or even experienced game testers, do let them know in their Discord. The link is in the description. And before we begin, I sincerely hope you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what you see here today, and if you want to see more from the Dawnless Days. And finally, I wish to convey a heartfelt message from the team, the true heroes of Total War, who's wanted nothing more than to share all of this with you every step of the way. Our aim has always been to create a story-driven campaign with unique mechanics that can encapsulate the main themes depicted by the Lord of the Rings books: hope, friendship, the struggle of good and evil, and the corrupting nature of power, with the designs of Peter Jackson's movies. For this reason, we have modified Attila's mechanics to fit into this narrative, while also filling, and planning to fill, the mod with features that move the gameplay towards the plot of the trilogy, while also allowing for departures from the lore in an organic manner since, after all, this is Total War. We hope that what you see here is something that makes you both curious and hopeful, as we ourselves have been every day since we saw that first, lonely peninsula of Dol Amroth in the immense sea of Middle-earth. Have some wonderful holidays, the Dawnless Days team. For those painfully unaware, the Dawnless Days is a work-in-progress Lord of the Rings Total conversion mod for Total War Attila, and even though it's been offering amazing custom battles for years now, the promise of a campaign has been looming in the shadows like Gollum in the Mines of Moria. And now, even though full release remains on the horizon, I am finally able to share with you exactly what the team has been so hard at work on. But before we return to the campaign itself, let's take a brief look at some of our playable factions. The first batch of playable factions in the Dawnless Days will be Gondor, Rohan, Erebor, Woodland Realm, and Dale for the human, dwarven, and elven factions, and Mordor, Isengard, Haradrim, and Rohirrim for the evil factions. And we can already now see the depth to which these different races of good and evil will appear distinct and unique. Gondor holds the potential to be a powerhouse of military might and culture, with their faction traits lending them the edge you might need to defend the world of men against the hordes of Sauron. Rohan attains great bonuses to cavalry and the Horse Lord way of life, plus a strong buff to their agricultural economy. Mordor has a much easier time recruiting armies upon armies with lowered upkeep costs, a bonus to sacking, attacking, and raiding. Isengard and their current swagged up Sauron, just kidding, that's a placeholder, whose Uruk-hai will receive a bonus to campaign and battle movement, and as with Sauron, we'll see powerful buffs to raiding and sacking, and the dwarves of Erebor, who are masters of construction and industry, and who not only get powerful buffs when fighting against orcs or when defending, but whose recruitment costs are lowered per orc faction they are actively at war with. But there's more. In addition to faction traits, Dawnless Days is completely revamping Attila's power mechanic. You know that power bar that shows how strong your faction is internally? In vanilla, this was fairly generic for every faction. But now, and as development continues, power is converted into unique mechanics per race. Gondor, for example, has been given the Dominion of Men mechanic, which essentially governs Gondor's legitimacy in the eyes of men. The more worthy you are of this dominion, the more morale and fighting power your soldiers have. The longer they move, the cheaper they are to recruit, and the better your relations with other good aligned factions become. The opposite, meaning the worse their dominion is, means you'll have a much harder time controlling your forces and winning battles, with sharp drops in morale and melee attack and defense. Other factions will have their own version of this new power system, like the Dwarves of Erebor's Sons of Durin mechanic, which determines their faction's greed level, which in turn can make them filthy rich, but more prone to bad events and the creep of the power of shadow. Or Mordor's power system, which focuses entirely on the authority of Sauron. The stronger Sauron's favor is, the stronger the resolve of the orcs and the power of shadow becomes, making it easier to wage offensive wars and keep the armies in check. As development chugs on and as release approaches, every playable faction is intended to receive their own version of the new power system, along with their own unique faction scripts. This alone brings an unprecedented amount of faction diversity and uniqueness to the campaign, and it's truly wildly impressive to see the creativity that's gone into revamping and tailoring these systems to the various powers of Middle-earth. But that's not the only new campaign mechanic on display here. Public order and sanitation have been completely revamped, and instead of essentially measuring the happiness of a province, public order has been converted into the new mechanic of militancy. Militancy measures your population's willingness to be prepared for and wage war. This is to more accurately simulate what's actually going on in Middle-earth, the urgency of the good races to mobilize and stand ready to defend themselves against the forces of evil. What's fascinating is that this has a big impact on your province in a military sense. A high militancy level will decrease your recruitment costs and increase your replenishment rate, which will be vital for the humans and elves in particular, who compared to the dark forces lack manpower. On the negative side of militancy lies ignorance, which increases recruitment cost and lowers your replenishment rate. Indeed, if ignorance reaches -100, you'll find yourself battling incursions into your regions, so you'll want to keep your militancy in the positive if possible, which can be done through various buildings and events. Sanitation, on the other hand, has been transformed into the new resolve mechanic, which essentially represents the morale of a province and the steadfastness of the population. A high resolve ensures that people go about their daily business as usual and that order is kept in your cities. Negative resolve represents despair, which can severely restrict your ability to muster your population and keep order. Rather than being more or less random like a disease outbreak used to be in Attila, resolve is influenced by buildings, characters and events, but importantly by invading armies. If an enemy army encroaches on your territory or besieges your city, the local population is likely to have the resolve severely lowered, perhaps even to the point of despair. It's therefore important to be aware of these mechanics to ensure that your realm is functioning as it should. And a big part of a functioning kingdom will at some point revolve around keeping the faith. You might be aware of the fact that Christianity, Roman paganism, and other religions actually don't exist in Middle-earth. Shocking, I know. But in their place, the team has made an incredible effort in converting the religions of old into the new alignment system. Every faction belongs to one of the game's two alignments, the Will of the West for so-called good factions and the Power of Shadow for the evil powers, as you've heard me reference before. In essence, rather than being a system of religion, alignment is more about portraying which side of the greater war between good and evil your faction serves. Will of the West factions, for example, receive more loyal or dedicated characters, lower corruption in their realms, and importantly, cannot keep slaves. Power of Shadow factions, on the other hand, can keep slaves, which simulates Mordor's and other factions' relentless industrialization and focus on preparing their war machine. But they're also highly adaptable, as they are able to gain sustenance from even the poorest regions, while also struggling with disorder in their army ranks, which can make it harder to keep generals fully loyal and dedicated to Sauron. Various influencers like agents will be able to bring your alignment further, but importantly, the Dawnless Days will make an extensive use of scripts, decisions, missions, and events to change and alter the state of the world. And just like with alignment, the power system we touched upon earlier will also be affected by events and scripts, which you will have to respond to and deal with in the way you see fit. This brings us to one of the central philosophies of the mod, namely its close relationship with the Lord of the Rings story and world, and commitment to player agency. You see, a true Lord of the Rings experience like this one should stay somewhat linked to the events of the original story to feel immersive. But as a Total War and strategy game, it's also important to strike a balance between linearity and freedom. This is why the Dawnless Days implements unique events for its factions that are tied to their development and role in the universe, while also allowing for variety. For example, Isengard begins the game as allied with the West, but of course, we know better. Depicting Saruman's treachery but relative weakness in the beginning of the game is a series of events dealing with defeating scouts from Rohan before they notice your backstabbing. Rohan scouts will appear periodically up until a certain point, when finally Isengard's realignment is revealed and full-scale war becomes inevitable. In other words, features and events like these will make every faction's experience of the campaign different. Now, you could of course choose to not complete the missions you're given and go your own way, but you do so at your own peril, since in the case of Isengard, Rohan finding about your treachery early will give you much less time to prepare for war. Similarly, a faction like the Haradrim must go on the offensive to unite the tribes of the desert and gain access to a host of new units previously unavailable to their faction. It's still early days for the stories and events that will shape your campaigns in the Dawnless Days, but I love this type of campaign design, especially for a campaign based on the Lord of the Rings, and I'm just really excited to see what challenges, twists, turns, and opportunities will await every faction in the future. Indeed, even though Total War games do toy with missions and decisions, they often don't feel as impactful as they could have, and I love that Dawnless Days actually dares to make these events feel integral to the gameplay experience and as part of the story itself. But of course, every one of our factions are made up of characters, and if there's one thing that's particularly charming, it has to be that we're finally reunited with the characters we know and love from this universe. For Gondor, seeing Boromir and Faramir is just lovely, and I find it so cool to watch those Riders of Rohan, the Uruk-hai, and the Harad soldiers represented on this map and with these visuals. But perhaps even more important than how beautifully these characters are modeled is the new character personality and skill system of Dawnless Days. The team has done something incredible here that I personally never thought possible, which frankly could be said for this entire miracle of a mod. Instead of the regular Attila skill tree, which frankly feels so samey after a short while in the vanilla game, the modders of Dawnless Days have somehow managed to convert Thrones of Britannia's more personalized character system into Attila. What this means is that every character will now have their own traits and followers that will change and evolve over time and as you make choices in the campaign. This will allow us to specialize our characters in much more immersive and unique ways than Attila ever did. And frankly, it's so much fun to simply look at a different character interface. While of course still highly work in progress with art and information, I think the icons and layout fit so well with the Lord of the Rings setting, and since the characters of Lord of the Rings and Total War for that matter, regardless of your allegiance, are so important, I can't wait to see how this will transform our campaigns, and how much more personality this new system will lend our generals. We're not even done with our characters yet though, as the family trees of Attila have been reforged. Now, instead of the family tree, this tiered menu now represents the chain of command within a faction. As such, even though the system itself works more or less like the family tree used to, with our new system now displaying the internal hierarchy in the realm. This is a system that functions equally well for the good factions as it does for the evil ones, and since the actual time span of this mod is so short in terms of actual years, it doesn't really matter much that the concept of families are gone. This is the lead up to and the actual War of the Ring we're playing here after all, which means ain't nobody got time to make babies anyway. But there is still more goodness to go through here. You see, the team hasn't stopped at redesigning the character system, but have gone a step further and expanded and reworked provinces and city management. And what's obvious right from the get-go is how much more room for customization and roleplay our cities now offer. Now, province capitals allow you to expand and make use of up to 12 building slots, while the quote-unquote smaller cities can fit 9 slots. This stands in stark contrast to Attila's 6 and 4 available buildings respectively. Not only does this help to bring that all-important sense of roleplay in city management back to Total War, but it crucially allows for smaller factions to make themselves heard, by allowing the player to invest heavily into particular regions and for example make Isengard and the Gap of Rohan a powerful industrial region on its own. Coupled with the new 12 turns per year and the all-new edict system, the Dawnless Days is therefore intended to be a strategic and immersive experience where governing your realms properly is equally important as actually waging war. But as you no doubt noticed right away, Dawnless Days also brings us all new beautiful building icons. And the best part, they are completely unique and tailored to each faction, both in terms of buildings and their specific icons, but also by way of color scheme. Rohan's signature green is dominant in their cities, Gondor favors detailed artwork on white marble backgrounds, and the red color of the Harajim prides their every city. Notice also that every faction offers a ton of completely unique buildings you can't get anywhere else, which further deepens the flavor of every single campaign. Along with the completely new and unique map of Middle-earth, as you've seen throughout this video, its all-important major cities will be represented with unique models on the map. Some of these cities are beautiful Minas Tirith, the massive Hornburg of Helm's Deep, towering and ancient Orthanc of Isengard, and Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower of Sauron. Yes indeed, now there are 2 of them. Everything is work in progress, even their rotation and placement will be polished for release, and more unique city models will join them as development continues. That being said, it's going to be so much fun to see this map beautified further, with even more unique models littered around it, and of course with the knowledge that many will eventually be represented as equally unique models on the battlefield as well. When all is said and done, every feature big and small showcased in this video entails essentially an entirely new Total War experience, and will, by the looks of it, constitute one of the deepest, unique, large-scale, and most modern-feeling Lord of the Rings experiences ever. And yet, this is just the beginning. I sincerely hope you enjoyed what you saw here today, and that you'll tell the modders and myself what you think. The Dawnless Days has been a passion project from its team members for years, and the fact that they're still developing and making massive breakthroughs is just heartwarming, and truly a blessing for every Total War and Lord of the Rings fan out there. The Dawnless Days can already now be downloaded on Nexus mods if you are into its great custom battles, but the full campaign is still waiting for us somewhere in the future. I wish to thank every Dawnless Days modder for their hard work and for entrusting me with the honor of representing it. As always, make sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!